Okay, we're good.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Thursday, June 11th, 2020. The time is 1:45 p.m. and I would like to call to order the Committee on Community Planning and Economic Development via this remote teleconference. The first item on the agenda is the chairperson's roll call. I am going to say everybody's name for them. I am Basha Adamczak, 7th Ward Councilwoman and Committee Chair. With us, we have Jeff Molinterno, Beverly Hosey, Sharon Woodbury, Jennifer Ozinger, Julius Oliver, Samantha Turner, Lauren McNally, Nikki Posterly, Rick Deek, Aaron Bishop, Mayor Tito Brown, Anita Davis, and Aaron Bishop. And I am going to ask everyone, just raise your hand if you want to be called upon, and then unmute yourself. And then please, when you're not speaking, to go ahead and mute your microphone. And the second item on the agenda is unfinished business. And under the first topic, we have the professional services agreement, the planning consultant, Hunter Morrison. Nikki, would you like to discuss that?
Thank you. Through the chair, I submitted the requested information after last month's meeting. So I guess at this point, I'll open it up for further questions.
Councilwoman McNally.
Yeah, I was just, I didn't see anything come through about sort of like what he's done so far for the last 4 months. Like what are some of the tangible action items? If I missed that, I'm sorry, but I did not see that come through. So maybe we could talk through that today.
Nikki. Nikki, you're still muted. Your microphone is still muted.
Sorry about that. The strategic recovery plan and the Youngstown Forward plan are the tangibles that he's working on. What he does submit to myself and the mayor is a timesheet that we actually have broke down the hours that he spent on those, but those are his internal timesheets that we submit for reimbursement. Those strategic recovery plans where you see where he's doing with the industrial, commercial development, the transit, the work that he's doing in each ward, the downtown plan, as well as the mayor's vision for his Youngstown Forward plan. Those are his actual active action items that he's working on. In that, we also detail which area that he's working on regarding the reuse of Hayes School and Buckeye School, some of those school initiatives, Lincoln Oaks, what he's doing in Rocky Ridge. So if you want to talk through some of those details, we can do that. But in a nutshell, that's everything that he's been doing since he started this contract with the city.
Lauren, do you have follow-up?
Yeah, just a follow-up. So I guess if we could drill down a little bit and talk about like the accomplishments based off those plans, you know, like were there certain numbers or percentages that he accomplished of the plan, or like it's one thing to look at like the whole scope of work that he's, you know, tasked with completing, but maybe like how are we progressing through that?
Okay. Some of the deliverables is, you know, Hunter's been in the weekly meetings with our consultants along with Beverly with the consolidated plan and helping us work through that process. Excuse me. In that plan and all of the meetings that we've been having, he's been also assisting with those. And that plan has been completed by Beverly and the team and is up for submission. Also, we meet bi-weekly with YNDC with the housing strategy that they've been working on. So all of the surveys that have gone out, we have a housing committee that we gather every other week, and Hunter's involved in that and helping us with kind of that's the footprint of where the market should be for housing, what type of housing should be where. So those are ongoing. The McKelvey Lake, He's been active in the whole McKelvey Lake acquisition, meeting with the Land Conservancy, if not a couple of times a week, making sure that the city's interests are first and foremost with that acquisition, looking at the grant that's been presented, the grant opportunities that's been presented to make sure that those are in line with the city's mission. We're also working with, and this is pre-COVID, but we started a news block committee where we're looking at another development opportunity, economic development opportunity that Hunter is also engaged in. We're also looking at and working with the land bank on some other land acquisitions for economic development on downtown and on Glenwood. He's also a part of the committee that's helping the chief with the fire station. There's a lot of activity that takes time to plan out, and this is where the planner is integral in making sure all of those are aligned. Some of the other things that we've worked on together is looking at our zoning division, and what we're doing now is restructuring our zoning division. So some of my ideas and some of Hunter's ideas, just in the observations that I've had, have come together, and we're working with the law department now to get more involved in some of our zoning in cleaning up a lot of the backlog that was outstanding in zoning enforcement. We're also updating our job descriptions. Some of our job descriptions have not been updated since the early 90s. So there's just so many different things that come in line with the planner. One of the things we were proud of to be a part of is WRTA received a $250,000 grant. And, this is where, again, Hunter's been working closely with Charlie in getting, making sure that the city was involved in the planning process in acquiring that grant. So there's just a lot of filters out there that a planner has to take part in. And this is what Hunter's been doing for us.
Councilman Oliver, you had your hand up.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to say about Hunter, if anybody's familiar with a lot of the improvements that have happened in Cleveland, Hunter was directly involved with his planning to make those things happen and the execution of them. So, and of course, Cleveland's economic development department and planning department is a lot larger than ours, but I think having somebody on board like Hunter that brings that experience from Cleveland to Youngstown to help us get to that point is very valuable. I would also like to add that in having conversations with him, he's very receptive to new ideas, to getting things done and actually jumping on top of them immediately to try to make those things happen as soon as possible. So that's just what I wanted to add. I'm comfortable with this piece, and that's it. Thanks.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, yes. Is that you, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then Councilwoman Davis had her hand up, but go ahead, Mayor.
If I could, I just wanted to add just a piece. When Youngstown saw some of its greatest success is when you had Bill Davion, you had Anthony Kobeck, you had Hunter Morrison working, and Jay Williams working all together on the 2010 plan. But that was just only one piece. That was the partnership. And I think he brings the kind of, planners are one thing, but they actually make sure the things that need to get done happen. Some of the resources that we've been able to achieve because he understands the language of what needs to happen. I think we've just received a couple other grants for some planning opportunities at 20 Federal. So I think what we're looking for, we need somebody who, if we talk about plans on Market Street, we talk about plans on Mahoney, we talk about, just plans in general, what we all want to see in our wards. The planner is the actual person who makes sure that all the pieces are in place to get it moving and to get it to completion. And I think Hunter brings a great wealth of knowledge. And like Julia said, he is definitely open. I think we've sat down with most of the council members on this call to talk about what would you like to see in your ward. And he's been actively talking to me about, let's figure out how to make that happen. So that's my insight. I think, for him to be a part of when we saw some of our greatest success and moving forward and him coming back on to move here. He's going to be here, so he's not going anywhere. So I think it'll be to our great advantage to have that knowledge and to continue moving that forward for many of you in your ward and the projects that are there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Davis.
Well, let me just start with, did we already approve the purchasing of McKelvey? I might have missed that. McKelvey Lake. What all have we approved, voted on for McKelvey Lake?
Through the chair, nothing's been voted on. We're still in negotiations with the Land Conservancy. They're trying to acquire grants to help with the completion of the dam.
Okay. My concern about this, leaving aside the dam part, we're looking at a hunter, we're looking at Beverly, and then you're looking at an assistant to Hunter that we're going to hire for down the road. So we'll have Beverly, Hunter, and a third person. Is that correct? Someone?
I'm looking for a planning team. Beverly, under this plan that I've submitted, Beverly is going to be the director of the Community Development Division.
Okay, so what, go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So that's separating out the planning portion.
Okay, so what's the number that we're gonna have on this team? Because I don't wanna see this thing constantly going up, up, and up. But go ahead, so what's the number of the team, the absolute number we're gonna be, to compose this team?
If you look at the plan I submitted, there's 3 in that division.
And to the follow up to the chair, that's what you submitted, but is that number the final number?
Again, this is the starting point based on the budget that was passed. What I want to do again is keep this plan, as any plan, open so that we can look at it and analyze it every year to see where we are, where we need to cut back, if we need to add, what are our budget restrictions, what worked, what didn't work. So I want to keep this plan open. I don't want to say this is it. This is the bottom line. What I'm saying is based on the budget that was presented and that was accepted in February, this is the plan that I think, with the help of Hunter, with the help of talking to all other partners, that will work right now within our limitations. So if you're asking next year, am I going to come up with something different? I don't know. I know what we need right now to help us move forward.
Anita, did you have a comment or follow-up?
I'm gonna hold my comment.
Okay, and Councilwoman Turner, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, so I don't think any of us can really deny the talent and the track record of Hunter. And I might be wrong, Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong. If we're getting at what were the tangible results of the first part of his contract, which happened this past fall. And then, of course, we see this plan has been developed over these last couple of months. But what I am hearing and what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is that I don't know that there is such a separation in, this contracted work versus the work of the director overall. I'm seeing a lot of work that we have paid staff to do, and Hunter is taking the reins. I've seen him heading up meetings and committee meetings and wondering how is that fitting in? It's one thing to have this contractor observing and taking notes and collecting the data and then putting it out in a way that everyone can understand. But I'm really unsure of how we are functioning with it seeming that he's an employee and not an independent contractor. So please, help clear up that blurring of lines, because they are significantly blurred for at least myself at this point.
Nikki?
Through the chair, we currently do not have a planner, so someone has to fill that role. And maybe consultant, when he came on as a consultant, maybe his title should have been a contracted city planner, because that's the role and those are the needs that are being unfulfilled without him being there. So with regard to running meetings, again, the meetings that the design review committee meeting and the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, those are the roles of a city planner. And that's why he filled that role, so that we can have a better understanding of how efficient it should be run in that place. Prior to that, I believe Bill and or Teron, when he was in that position, was running those meetings, which again would be Beverly. If we kept things the way they are and they were structured the way they are, it would be Beverly's position to run those meetings. But what we're trying to do is to break out the department into divisions so that we can make sure that they're efficiently run, and structuring it that way is how we are able to justify how efficiently they should run. Mayor, did you want to add anything with regard, and Jeff's on the line too, I believe, with regard to Hunter running the meetings, because I know that was a question last meeting.
Sure, through the chair.
Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just the running the meeting part. I mean, many of the committees have all their non-members of the administration or non-city worker that are on those committees. I know from the health, I serve as the chair on the health commission board. If I'm not there, the second of the vice chair runs the meeting. They are not city employees. So running a committee meeting is nothing new. There's not, if the chair or the design review, the vice chair, who is probably not a city employee, would run the meeting. So those things are not uncommon in committee settings or structures. I think the other piece you guys talked about, the tangibles. If you look at the build grant that we have coming along, Hunter really was the one who stepped in to help to make sure there's pieces of the puzzle that as a planner, you say, hey, you need to make sure that you have an opportunity to have these pieces in place. And because you're only going to get one swing at this a big project like that. And he's been very adamant and attentive to making sure the city's interests are taken care of during the build grant. So, and his other piece, he's brought along all the other entities, the Port Authority, the WRTAs of the world, YSU, and we're all sitting together looking at a collective, what's a regional plan, a city plan look like, so we're not scattered all over the place. And he's been a great orchestrator to bring everyone to the table so that we have Youngstown at the table when things are being said and or when there's dollars and resources there for planning.
Councilman Oliver, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the mayor's point. In other cities, whether they're small or big, in the planning, they have whole planning departments. I mean, that's, exists within their economic development. And those departments are staffed up with multiple people, making sure that all these plans go through and aren't bottlenecked. And that's something we've been lacking for a very long time. So I just think this whole planning part of this is very important. And I think, Youngstown needs a plan for itself, probably more than anything right now, to have a strategic direction on which way we need to go. So I think my opinion in it is if it's Hunter by itself, it's still not going to be enough because things will still get bottlenecked. So I'm okay with Hunter and another planner and somebody else even coming along to assist that within the economic development department. But to Samantha's point, well, I think it's to Samantha's point, there has to be clear lines between who does what, who's doing what, because if not, things will still get bottlenecked, things will still get confused, and basically everybody has to play their part. So I said that to say, if the planning division of this has to grow, which I think it will, I think it's a good thing to make it grow, because if it grows, then the city's development will also grow as well. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Oliver. And Councilman Davis.
Yes, since the attorney is here and the elephant in the room, which is Teron, counselor, where are we at with that?
So through the chair, that is pending litigation, and that is not something that would be appropriate to discuss in a public forum like this. That's something that I'm definitely comfortable talking about if we were to have a time to do an executive session to discuss what the status of that is and how that may or may not have an impact on anything to do with any restructuring in CPED.
Through the chair, follow up. This what he's saying is one of my problems, but we have this blank spot here. You know, this thing that's lingering, and yet we're being asked to make a decision, and there's still this thing over here, this apple that's dangling, that could be a good apple or a bad apple. Being very technical. So it's a little difficult to be saying, let's make these decisions when this thing is still dangling over there.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
Mayor.
Well, we still have the day-to-day operations that need to happen, and what I would caution us to do is worry about what's going to happen. 5 days from now or 5 months from now. We still have operations. We still have plannings. We have projects that need to move on, and my hesitation is not to worry about what's going to happen in the future. We can't predict the future. We just know that there are things right now. There are opportunities that we don't want to miss. And I think the legalities will take care of itself. I'm asking this council to look at the day-to-day operations and look at the needs of your ward and make sure that we can fulfill those with this planner. The legal side will let that work itself out. I want us to make sure that we're not just pushing pause right now to wait and maybe we wait and nothing happens. So I'm asking you, that's two separate issues. I don't care what anybody told you, what anybody's telling you. The legal side is legal side. To move forward with this position or have someone in this role for the city of Youngstown is very beneficial to the citizens right now, specifically coming out of COVID. I mean, there's so many other pieces that are going to be in play as we recover, and we're going to have somebody who's going to be leading that planning process for us, and we can't wait for others to come. And not to say even if they were here, they have the talent and or the capability to do so. So I think I ask that you keep them two separate issues. We're working the here and now, and with the future, we can't predict it.
Jeff, Attorney Molinterno, because technically with the judicial process, I mean, they could appeal and this could be ongoing for not infinitely, but I mean, for months or years. And is that why Mayor's basically saying why we need to move forward from an administrative standpoint and continue doing city business?
Yeah, and I just want to echo what the mayor is saying. And I'm trying to be careful because, like I said, there is pending litigation going on with this case right now. But what I do want to stress is that that pending litigation is involving a claim that the administration did not have a valid basis to terminate an individual. That litigation, I think there's a legal distinction between that litigation and what this committee decides to do as far as making any decisions on how to restructure or move forward with the department. And so those are different altogether. And although there may be pending litigation that may give some of the members pause, and like I said, I'm happy to discuss those in some sort of executive session if that's necessary. I do want to echo what the mayor is saying in making it clear that there is a distinction between a restructuring and any pending litigation for a decision by the administration. And to answer your question just straight on, yes, this could continue for another 6 months, another year, especially with COVID. Until the end of July, all legal filing deadlines have been stayed, and so things aren't going anywhere fast.
Councilman McNally, and then I was going to also ask my colleagues, it seems as though we've kind of transitioned from talking about just the planning consultant and transitioning to the next bullet point, which is the restructuring. So I don't know if you guys wanted to kind of finish up Hunter and then talk about restructuring. But go ahead, Councilwoman McNally.
Thanks. I can go back to Hunter and save my other questions for when we get to agenda number 2 there. I guess I'm struggling with it from a financial perspective with the Hunter Hunter piece, we didn't have, we didn't have anyone filling that role, or we had a combined role with what Beverly's role is now in the past. And we had that for many years in place. And I assume, the economic development director also played a role in that piece too. So maybe the two, those two employees, whomever they were throughout time, worked together to fulfill that planning need that we had. And so, knowing that right now we're in a position of financial uncertainty and, the finance director has made drastic steps, and we still have a lot of people laid off and services suspended in various departments. I guess I'm struggling to expand a department during that time, and knowing that while it didn't work as well as maybe we all hoped it was working by having the combined position, perhaps it's in our best financial interest at this point in time to maintain it that way, as we're asking everybody to kind of do more and pick up the slack that we're facing right now until we are more certain in our economic situation.
Nikki?
Through the chair, Councilwoman McNally, I'm turning up my volume. The contract that Hunter is under now is covered under our CDBG funds through our professional services through HUD. So none of that will be coming out of our general budget. Regarding the consolidating of the positions, some of the challenges in that is the skill set that's needed to do both is huge. We are in the situation we're in now because your focus is either on community development or planning. And as great as a person and as great as a director Bill was in being able to merge both of those, you still find yourself gravitating to what you know. And he was well-versed in community development. Independent of that, we have not had a planner for 12 years. So a lot of the economic development that has happened from over these past 12 years was not the direct result of having one planner being able to look at everything and objectively see what fits the business community, what are they asking for, can we provide it, do we have the workforce here to make sure that when those businesses come here that our community is first and foremost in being able to retain those jobs, as well as what does the community want? Does the community even want these businesses coming here? So that planner, again, is the tie-in to what is going on in economic development and what the needs of the community are. So combining them and looking at the relationships and the partnerships and the regional opportunities that are out there, I think combining them and keeping them combined right now will put the city at a disadvantage, which is why we actually are excited that we were able to craft this contract in a way that it would be able to work under HUD's guidelines.
Councilman McNally, follow-up.
Yeah, just, a couple of things. Okay, so he's being paid for out of CDBG funding. Then I guess, again, from a financial perspective, it might seem like it's best to maintain this type of contracted service throughout the course of time, because it can be paid for through CDBG rather than our general fund and hiring somebody in-house. I know that we like to do that in our other departments. It's so, what's why aren't we just going down that road here? I had a couple more, but perhaps we'll just stick to one. Sorry.
Nikki?
I'm not sure if I understand the question fully. You're saying if we can cover Hunter through and I don't understand the part about internally. I think I'm
yeah. So if we can cover, if Hunter can be a contractor, Hunter can be paid through CDBG to fulfill the planning position as a consultant. Why don't we just keep that as our structure moving forward versus taking on the cost of an employee hitting the general fund to fulfill that position?
Excuse me. If we were to follow the structure that I presented, hunters would be completely under CDBG, and then the assistant planner right now that would be fulfilling that role, part of that would be under CDBG. $50,000 of that would be under CDBG as an employee. It's a different setup per HUD when it's a contract versus an employee. So that's why we were able to charge off $50,000 of the actual employee salary versus the whole contractor salary.
Wait, I'm sorry, you confused me. So you're not paying 100% of his contracted salary through CDBG?
Hunters is 100% contracted because we have those professional services dollars set aside in HUD, in our HUD fund. The employee salary has to be structured differently per HUD. So if we were to, if the plan was approved as submitted, and we got Hunter and another planner to work alongside of him, $50,000 of that planner's salary, the one that would be the actual employee, can be charged off to HUD. Because the way it has to be structured per HUD, if you were an employee.
Okay, so I guess I'm gonna stick with my original statement then. I would rather maintain Hunter as a contracted position long-term and not take on any additional employees internally. So that's just a statement.
Councilwoman Davis, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I'm following up on what Lauren was saying. So presently, 100% of Hunter's salary is through CDBG. It would continue to be through CDBG funds for Hunter if we retained him. And then 50% of the new person would be through CDBG. Is that correct? Do I have it right?
$50,000 of their salary, not 50%, but $50,000 of their salary.
Okay. But 100% of Hunters is through CDBG.
Correct, as a professional service contract.
Okay, and it will remain that way.
That is correct.
Okay, so the new person would be the $50,000 would be from CDBG funds. And then we would recover cover the other, what is it, 22,000 plus that person's benefits.
If they
correct?
need, yes.
So we're looking at about $45,000 out of the general fund?
Possibly, yes.
Okay, where's the not possible part at? What's
possibly because if the person didn't need insurance.
Okay.
So possibly, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I just quick comment as well. I understand everybody's concern, regarding where, finances and where the city stands and how we're struggling. But with that being said, we also have to kind of consider that an economic development and the planning department, that part of the administration is where revenue can be generated to help run the city and to put more money into our general fund. So I think it's beneficial to kind of put more resources and more people in that department. I mean, maybe, as Nikki mentioned, maybe this isn't going to be the final plan. It's going to need to be revisited. However, what we have in place right now isn't really working. So some kind of change needs to happen. So I think we kind of need to consider that as well. Councilman Oliver.
Yeah, I just wanted to add kind of to your point, Councilwoman Adamczak, that during a time of uncertainty is exactly the time when you want to invest for times when things go back up. For instance, while I was closed for 2 months for this COVID thing, I hired employees, I bought new equipment for the time when I would reopen. Now, I could have sat back and not prepared myself for when times got better, but that would have put me at more of a disadvantage. And I think it's the same in the city right now. Yeah, things are uncertain right now, but this is the time where you start investing into the economic development department so we can plan for pulling new businesses in, how we're going to take care of those businesses, and plan the city out even further. This is the exact time where you invest when times are uncertain. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Councilman Turner had her hand up, and then Councilman McNally.
So let me see if I'm clear with this. So I understand the need for the position that Hunter is in, and I hear everything you're saying that he has done and is doing, and he's helping us to build some relationships. Sorry about that. So, but if Hunter is for this year at 75, and then we also said possibly next year at 75, I'm not seeing really the urgency of adding an additional planner, another planner, when what you're saying, Nikki, when you were like listing off the questions and the information that this planner is gathering, it's a lot of questions and information that I should be able to go straight to my economic development director, and they should be able to provide that information, provide that research, provide that information. So what I'm seeing here and hearing is that we understand the need for the position that Hunter is holding. We understand the work that Hunter is doing, but maybe during this time we work through the job descriptions and what everyone is doing, and kind of make sure that we're not blurring the lines, because this is, just the second time after you're talking, you blurred the line again between the planner and the economic development director. So I think this might be a time for us to, if we bring Hunter in that capacity, and then it's time for us to lay this out and work through each description and what each person's duty is before we expand this department even more. In addition, we do still have to be cautious. I know it's a time for us to move forward and to not rest on our laurels, and I don't think we're doing that at all, but we are still in a time of economic uncertainty, and making these decisions and having people overlap in jobs is something that we don't need to do. Hunter's giving us the space and the opportunity, and his work is giving us the space and opportunity to do this right and in a very quality manner, because we don't want to continuously revisit and make so many more financial investments into something that we probably could have worked through in the beginning.
Basha, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I was actually going to call on Sharon quickly, because I believe, do you have a direct comment for that, Sharon?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to address a good point that Councilwoman Turner brought up, and that is that economic development requires an effort from a number of different disciplines and skills. Housing strategy is economic development. Planning is economic development. Our public works and infrastructure, that's all contributing to economic development. Those lines will blur because we are working towards an end result of improving our community and making it somewhere where we can encourage businesses to invest. There absolutely is going to be a blurring. I've been working very closely with Hunter. I think it's a great idea to bring Hunter on board, because he's bringing a planning perspective and helping with land use strategy, which we need to have. We have to have a plan moving forward in terms of how we're going to promote economic development and working with our businesses. We've been successful in securing hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants, because not only can we say that we are providing our skill set and working to attract jobs and attract industry, but we got a plan connected to it. That's what all of these agencies want to see. That's how the state is structuring all of their programming now with economic development. They want to see plans and strategies in place. It would be, I think, a horrible decision for us to make in not stressing and putting value on the planning component of economic development.
Councilman Oliver.
Sharon said everything I was going to say. She added a little more than I was going to say, but but in addition to Hunter, I think Hunter is still to just to rebut what Councilwoman Turner said. I don't think you can have just Hunter doing the planning on his own. Yes, he is a great mind. He has a great skill set. He has great experience. But if it's just him, I think it's still going to get bottlenecked. So that's why I think he still needs that person on the side that's going to be able to help him continue to plan as well as execute those things. I think without that, you'll have a lot of plans, but they won't necessarily go anywhere. And for years in economic development, the lines have been blurred, in my opinion, because everybody basically has to work and do their job to the 100% efficiency level in order to get Youngstown to where it needs to be. It can't be any lag in any department within economic development. Everybody has to put in 100% and make it happen. And if Hunter doesn't have that, everybody has their part to play, but Hunter's going to need that other guy, not only just to help him out, but to be there when Hunter's not there down the road. And then we need to replace somebody else to come on board, because you got to cross train, you got to prepare the next generation. And that's how I see that happening. Hope that made sense to everybody. Thank you.
Councilman McNally, and I apologize because you had your hand up previously. Go ahead.
First, Sharon, I appreciate your perspective on this situation because you have been in this department for a really long time. So thank you for just chiming in and being a part of the conversation here. I think I would like to talk to Kyle again about the whole thing, because I know budgets have shifted, and even though we maybe planned for this at the beginning of the year, things look differently now, and we haven't been able to connect on that finance component yet. And we did finally schedule that meeting. So I'd like to see what he has to say in general. I wish he actually was on this call. But I would also like to do an executive session with the law department to fully understand the ramifications, the timeline, the ins and outs of that position, especially given, I don't want any more surprises like we had this week in the news with our law department situation. So I would rather be safe than sorry there and just make sure that I am fully comfortable and understand that side of things. And then, we have a council meeting on Wednesday. If it's available for everyone to even do that, then, we could get it done quickly and out of the way. Then just sorry to keep going. My actual question, I guess, would be to Nikki, why couldn't we just pay the new person, or the planning commission or the planning person you want to hire in-house, the $50K? Why can't he just, and then he or she could be completely covered and not hit the general fund at all, and just make the salary lower, especially if he's going to be an assistant, quote unquote, that we've been throwing out that term a lot, to Hunter, or we're going to have Hunter and this person working together. Seems like we don't need to bring somebody in at such a high salary if we're thinking they're going to be sort of at a lower skill level, and we're going to be training up for this position. Bring them in lower and then have it covered fully and not impact the general fund.
Nikki.
Through the chair, the plan I submitted was a plan that, of course, we had worked on pre-COVID, pre the financial issues that we're facing now. It was also a plan of succession. So making sure that this person works side by side, so there will be a succession plan when Hunter's ready to retire again from what he's doing now with the city. This is, again, another reason why I like to keep this plan open and not closed, so that we can talk through situations as they come, such as financial situations, or if something doesn't work and we need to come back and revisit it. I'm more than happy to revisit that portion of it and restructure that portion of it. I don't want to lose the expertise and the value that I have in Hunter. And then that would be something that I would have to talk through with Beverly and making sure that we're within HUD guidelines as an actual employee, because we have shifted an employee salary under CDBG so that we can free up some money in the general fund already. So we're trying to be as fiscally responsible as possible working through this plan. Again, it is an open plan, so I can definitely revisit that planning assistant piece of it as we move forward.
Councilman McNally, does that answer your question? Councilman Davis and then Councilman Turner.
To the chair, yeah. I'm going to continue to have a problem with the idea of hiring that other person, especially at that salary. That just, if it's a learning situation, and I don't mean to be derogatory about it, but if we are his training and he's in training, why are we paying someone who's in the training situation the same way that we would someone who's as experienced as Hunter? Okay, I don't really have a problem with Hunter, but I do have a problem with that second person and coming in at that kind of salary. I just want you to know that. And the other thing, I'm doing a lot of stuff around my house. This is towards Councilman Oliver. I'm spending a lot of money at my house, but it is indeed my money. And how I expend my money, I mean, I understand it's your business. That's your business, but these are our tax dollars, not my dollars. And your money is your money. But we're talking about public dollars.
Direct,
Through the chair. Nikki, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Councilwoman Davis, to respond to that, the reason the salary is where it is because my department, the structure that I presented was breaking it into 3 divisions: an economic development division, a community development division, and a planning division. Hunter, in his consulting role, is consulting with not just Sharon, he's also consulting with Beverly, he's consulting with the mayor, he's consulting with the entire strategic plan. He's helping us figure out all of the holes that were in the gaps that we've had from 2008 up to now. So he's working in a bigger capacity than what an actual planner would be. This planning director would be the director of that division that we're trying to create. And just to add one more thing to that, if I may, Boardman alone, as small as Boardman is compared to Youngstown, has 6 people in their planning, under their planning department. I just want 3 to get us started, because we don't right
Boardman
now.
ain't poor. I'm gonna jump in. Boardman doesn't have a $24,000 a year average income. Okay, let's.
I understand.
And I apologize to the chair.
Through the chair. So
Yes,
to
Councilman
that-
Turner.
Thank you. Through the chair. So to that point, Nikki, right now in Hunter's capacity, he is helping, yourself, because, this is a new profession for you. He's helping Sharon, he's helping Beverly. He's also advising the mayor on what city planning looks like and helping build those relationships and helping us make the plan. So I'm not saying that that Hunter is a non-starter, but what I'm saying is that adding another employee in the midst of, 1, our financial situation, but 2, in the midst of him essentially training everybody, because as the director of this department, I expect for that director to have a good understanding of HUD and CDBG, have a good understanding of economic development, have a good understanding of city planning. So if we have a resource here that is essentially making sure that everybody has an understanding that obviously since 2008, we haven't had then why can't we work here in this realm and really, really structure this department before we go ahead and add more people on top? Because as Councilman Oliver keeps saying, things get bottlenecked, but things get bottlenecked because of the lack of information and understanding as well. So if Hunter is providing information and understanding to the director and to the director and to the director, let's allow him that time. What I'm saying is that he is providing you with space and opportunity to get the information and understanding that we obviously don't have right now. So I just think that moving forward and adding more people to the department could be very inefficient for us, because right now we're not functioning that well. He's providing that stability that we need and that learning and time that we need. So, you know, of course the lines are blurred because we haven't known what we were doing since, like you keep saying, 2008 to now. So Hunter, I'm good on that because I can see his track record, I can see his experience, I can see all the hard work that he has done and what he's doing. But adding another person on top of all of this training, I mean, we can maybe revisit this for the start of next year. But right now, it seems like we just have a lot of people needing to learn a lot of things at one time.
Sharon, I saw your hand up, but first I wanted to ask the committee because we're getting kind of off topic again. So are we okay with the planning consultant with Hunter's position and move forward to speaking directly about the restructuring plan? Lauren and Julius? Are you guys okay to kind of start talking about the restructuring in general?
Yes.
Okay. Sharon, go ahead.
I just wanted to address some of the comments that Councilwoman Turner made in terms of how our roles are blending together. I don't want to misrepresent that Hunter is in a position that provides a temporary need. If you look at all of the cities across the country, there is always a planning component that works with economic development. It's not just for a period of time to educate or teach, it's because we're collaborating together. So back in 2008 and beyond, we needed a planner. We're going to need a planner in perpetuity, not because someone doesn't know what they're doing, but it's because they complement each other.
Direct follow-up. So,
Councilwoman Turner, can you please wait to be called upon?
So, through the chair. So I'm not saying that it's because people don't know what they're doing. What I'm saying is that there is a training session that's happening right now. I mean, essentially, Hunter is putting on a clinic for us, and he is doing that. He's giving us the space. When we first had this conversation a month ago, it was for this year and for next year. We talked about this being $150,000 investment, and I get that. So what I am saying is that while we are in this training phase, because he is providing that information, he's showing the structure that we need, because we know his track record, we know the work that he's done, we know his resume, making sure that all the key players in the city know exactly how we are moving forward, and then things are laid out. Again, we talked about at the last meeting that we restructured and made some changes after the exit of Bill, but a lot of things aren't happening. So what I'm saying is that it could be a time for us to focus in on how we do business as a city and how we do business in our department, and then work through how we expand said departments.
Councilman Oliver, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just want to make a comment. If we want to get in all of our goals should be to take care of the citizens of Youngstown and expend the tax dollars to the most efficient manner possible. So what I'm doing and my thinking is looking down the road. I'm not looking right now. Right? If we want our citizens to be able to have household incomes above $24,000, the planning component of this is going to be very important to it. So I'm not looking at right now. I understand our situation right now, but if we want to get out of that situation we're in right now, Planning is going to be very important, and economic development running efficiently at 100% is going to be important. That's all I'm saying. We need this. Our citizens need this. We need to be able to get to a certain point down the road. We can't just concentrate on right now.
Nikki?
Thank you. And to add to what Councilman Oliver is saying, Hunter is as a consultant again, and maybe a year ago or 6 months ago or 8 months, whenever his contract was initially approved, maybe we should have called him at that point a city planner contract, because we keep using the term consultant, and I believe it's out of context with what he's doing. The training, to Councilwoman Turner's point, is planning. He's not training us, he's doing city planning. He's showing us how community development needs to work with economic development, needs to work with planning to plan the needs and the resources that go out in the community. With regard to the director of the division having an understanding of all, I've had background in HUD, I have background in real estate, and I also have background in social work and community planning as well. So I do have a background and understanding of all divisions and how they fit together, as well as organizational management, which is what we're doing now. Creating this structure, creating this space, dividing out the divisions into what makes sense, putting people where their skill sets can be readily used is what that job entails. Hunter is a contracted city planner. And again, when his contract was created by Mayor and Jeff, or however, we probably should have called it that at that time.
Councilwoman Davis?
Thank you. Through the chair, to Beverly. So the idea of, would we be able to, once we do bring on this other person, and I'm in agreement with Councilwoman Turner that it should be next year, would his salary be able to come out of the CDBG funds? All of it?
Through the chair, Nikki and I will talk about that and get back to you with the total information.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions or comments?
I do have a comment. This is Beverly.
Yes, go ahead.
And I just wanted to clarify that Hunter is not training me on HUD and CDBG. That has been my life with the city for the 15 years. So I appreciate his skill as far as putting things together, and really want to have everyone acknowledge the differences between planning and the community development piece is more about the quality of life of the residents. And the planning piece is putting everything from economic development and all the other pieces together so that they can have that quality of life. And one of the biggest parts of my job is the administration and getting that funding, the HUD funding into the city, and monitoring and making sure everything is in compliance with all of our subrecipients and with everything we do in order to bring those HUD funds into the city every year.
Thank you, Beverly. Nikki, I just have a quick question, kind of clarification. So if we would not have this planning position and without Hunter that is playing multiple, roles, kind of, being the glue between all of the, different pieces of the department, who do we currently have that is designated and devoted strictly to planning? Like that's their concentration. Do we have anyone?
No. The way it's structured now, it would be Beverly in a joint role, but there's no one completely devoted to planning.
Okay, well, that's what I want to clarify. And I think that's kind of, as we have to be, cognizant and mindful of our budget, but especially with you saying that, I think it's almost foolish for us not to have people in the departments and the positions that are going to generate the most, revenue and income. And entice, economic development, have, new families and residents moving in. We need someone in that designated position. I think that position is so important. It definitely shouldn't be, a shared role with people having other things as well. I just feel that in general, CPED is so important that we need to make sure we have people in the positions to be able to, move our city forward and really have a plan for the future. Councilwoman McNally, who was first? Councilman McNally, then Turner, then Davis.
Thanks. Beverly, what you were saying was actually helping me a lot. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on it. You were saying how like you need your position, or let's talk in general terms. You were talking in general terms. The community planning position is really quality of life. This is what they deal with. These are the things that they're tasked with doing. And then economic development director is this. Can you maybe do the same thing with that? And then the planning person, the director of planning, is this, and elaborate more on that. Okay, can you just continue there?
Thank you, Lauren. Through the chair. I can elaborate a bit. Throughout the years when I worked under Bill, I worked as a compliance director, which I still am. So that gave Bill, as a combined community development and planner, additional time to focus on planning, because he had me doing a lot of the compliance related part of the community development program. And he didn't have to do a lot of that. So he was able to spend more time on the planning piece, because our two jobs kind of crossed each other, the community development director and the compliance director, because everything we do with HUD is compliance based. Any documents that we have to produce to get funding, any agencies that we fund, we have to monitor and make sure they're in compliance. So those two jobs kind of crossed each other, and he was able to devote more of his time to being out in the city and working with the planners, and he had a team. So economic development, once we combined our departments with economic development, it just gave us more of an opportunity to see how each department worked together, and the importance of combining all of our different skill sets and so forth. And I think now that the city will improve by having someone who focuses on planning, because community development cannot happen as effectively without a planner. Economic development can't happen as effectively without community development. Our people have to be able to work, able to have their social services and so forth. And so that's how all the pieces work together, because we depend on people to make a city run, businesses, people, and services. So that's the only way I can explain it at a point like this,
I'm sorry. Thank you. Basha, can I just a quick thought, I guess, can we just talk really generically, like super high level? The three departments are like economic development is tasked with driving business. That's the director of economic development's number one job. The director of community development's number one job is X, and then the director of planning's number one job is X. Super high level, super generic terms. Can maybe Sharon or Nikki or any, I don't care. Nikki, can you maybe tell me that?
Nikki?
Through the chair, yeah. During the presentation last month, and I think we probably were all kind of like zoning out by the time we got to that piece, I did go over kind of what those divisions are. Your economic development department is your sales force. They're like your real estate team. So they're the ones out reaching out to the businesses, seeing what their needs are, finding out if they need a building, if they need land. They're meeting with them. They're showing them what we have. They're trying to sell the city. That's our sales team. Your community development department, that's your quality of life team. They deal with the people. They want to meet the needs of the people. Is there adequate housing? What does that look like? Are they getting their fair share? Is there equity in everything that we're doing? Are we making sure that we're reaching out to our minority community? What does that look like? Is everybody getting a fair piece of what the sales team is bringing in? When Sharon's team goes out and brings the business in, are we making sure that our citizens can meet those job needs and that they're first? So again, there's that whole fair housing and that quality of life, those social services pieces. We partner with YMHA, YNDC, MyCap to make sure all of those social services are part of community development. And then your planning team is the vision. Your planning team is the one that's saying, okay, Sharon has business A, B, and C coming in here. Beverly's people are saying, this is what I need. We don't have the skill set, or we don't have the, how do I put this all together? How do I make this make sense so that Youngstown can move forward? Where do we want to put these housing units that Beverly's team is saying that we need? Is it going to be in a community where they're going to be able to get to their job? Do they have access to transportation? What does that look like? Do I need to get WRTA involved? Is it on a bus route? You know, those type of things the planner does to make sure that it meets the needs of both ends. And I know that was a lot, but I hope it was general.
Lauren, is it good? Okay, who is next? Councilman Turner and then Davis. Go ahead.
So just to real quick for Beverly, sorry, I'm not trying to belittle your work and what you do for city, because I know that you have done exceptional work and I work with you in different organizations with that work. So, but what I'm trying to say is that I believe that Hunter is providing a glue that we do need in this department that we have been lacking. But I just have some quick, straight questions. If that is what as you're saying, the sales team, economic development is sales team, how have you been functioning? This question is for Sharon. How have you been functioning without a vision over the time you've had this position? If it is just that simple, like, how have you been explain to us how you functioned over these past couple of years without a vision at hand and just being in that role as a salesperson or for the city?
Go ahead.
Direct response. So at this point, what we've been doing is just aggressively trying to market the city and bringing businesses in. It doesn't necessarily fit into a strategy of where that business would go, where we wanted to specifically target our funds for. A perfect example would be, we've been talking about corridors and trying to improve the look of our corridors and the funding. Right up until this point, it's just been, we've got a program, we're trying to get dollars out. We want to make sure that businesses have that money. But as I'm working with Hunter, we're looking at how does it make sense along that corridor to identify specific nodes? How do we bring our programs in to where there's some type of impact? Because we can haphazardly invest, and that's what we're doing. We're working with businesses, bringing them in, but we don't have a plan for where is the best place for those businesses to be. Where is the best place for that investment to happen? And so that brings a different perspective.
Councilman Turner, follow up.
So just so follow up. So as of before Hunter, and kudos to you, Nikki, for seeing that we needed to transition Hunter into a role that we could really get what we need out of all of his historical information. Prior to this, you've just been feeling a need as it comes up, and now it's now a working relationship that you're building with community planning, as well as the planning director, or in Hunter's position, consultant as planning director. Now you have all the pieces of the puzzle that you need to begin to move forward in a quality manner. Is that what you're saying, Sharon? Yes. Okay. So then, Nikki, my question for you is, are you at more than 50% of the meetings that Hunter is in?
Nikki?
Yes.
Okay, so you're in those meetings, and I'm assuming that you are learning the questions to ask and how he's laying out, and he's definitely pouring in, a lot of information as to how we need to look at things, correct?
I'm making sure that when we're on these meetings and in these calls, that the mayor is informed of what's going on. I'm asking my own set of questions. Hunter is acting on the role of the planner. He's not necessarily showing me how to be in these meetings. What he's doing is acting in the role of the planner. And I'm sitting, and while I'm in these meetings, I'm serving as on the role of the mayor's ear and keeping him engaged and invested in what's going on and making sure that the mayor's initiatives are included in these meetings.
Okay, so then that actually brings it to my question is, how are you functioning? Because you're also the director, you're also, over this whole department, and you're the mayor's chief of staff. How are you not blurring those lines? Yes, Hunter, I would assume, would have to report up to you, or you would have to give him, these are the things that we're looking for. But again, it seems as though, how do you direct everything and still be immersed in it as well? That's what I'm saying, and it might not be clear that I'm not saying that there it is not, we don't need to make a change, because I do believe that we do. But I feel like right now we're making a change without clear lines, because even though you're going to blur, everyone's going to work together. I believe that there is, Nikki, you're immersed in it as a chief of staff and the director. So you're spinning 8 plates at one time. And then you have, Hunter, who is the planner, who is essentially, what I'm hearing is just kind of the glue that brings all of the visions together. It just seems like right now we have a space and opportunity to do this in a quality manner. And with your 2 titles, which honestly, I feel like, Nikki, you're doing everything. Like, you are spinning 8 plates at one time, whether anyone wants to agree or not. But we've got to make this much more clear. And right now, as a council person and as a lay person, it's not clear to me as to why we need to increase and expand a department when we saw the void and we filled it. And we're saying, okay, here we are. We said we might need him for 2 years. All right, let's clear this up and propose the plan after everyone understands where we're going and how we're going, and the vision and mission is clear. That's what I'm saying.
Nikki, I just want to comment directly to that before you respond. And I think to Councilman Turner's point, I mean, she made a good point that you have so many tasks and responsibilities. And I think even more so for that reason, it's imperative for you to have working knowledge and understanding of everything that you are over. But that specifically even points out to why it is so important that there are individual people that are in those positions that have a set niche and expertise. So I think you need to be the overseer, but then people are going to be in the positions that, fill that particular void that we have, and that all have their particular niche that they're good at. We also have to kind of consider and think about, not only nationally, but I mean, even here locally, when you think about cities that have been, well, either cities that are thriving and doing well, or cities that previously were struggling and have rebounded, they have fully staffed and fully functioning CPED departments. And that's how they were able to, in a sense, I mean, rebound. Look at, even Pittsburgh and Akron, and and those are our neighbors, and they have fully staffed, fully functioning departments. And yes, I understand we're facing, financial issues, but I think it is being very responsible and money well spent to staff a department that is going to help the city financially and in terms of prosperity, and as Beverly mentioned, quality of life issues. And to make a potential $40,000 investment on something that we could have millions of dollars of returns, I think is well worth it. And it's hard for me to grasp how everyone else doesn't see that, I guess. But Nikki, go ahead.
And just in quick response, and I appreciate both comments from you and Councilwoman Turner. When I talk to, in response to being involved in Hunter's meetings, I'm also involved in Beverly's meetings. I'm also involved in meetings with Sharon and her team as well. And I'm also on a chief of staff committee. We have a group that we're called the Big Six, the Cleveland, the Cincinnati, Dayton, Toledo, Columbus, Akron. Those chiefs of staff are also engaged in their economic development and what's going on. So they're still engaged in understanding and sitting in some of those meetings so that, again, the needs of the mayor, and the mayor has a pulse, because we all understand that your community development, your economic development, that's the gateway to the city. So other chiefs of staff in other cities also have that same role. They may not be department heads, but they also are engaged and involved in those same kind of commitments with those departments. So I just wanted to clear up any confusion with that.
Councilman McNally.
Not to go back to that, Nikki, sorry, but I was actually going to ask you what, like, if you could break down your percentage of time doing economic development versus putting on your chief of hat staff, if there is a breakdown there, a little bit.
That's difficult. That's difficult to answer because, again, a lot of the things that are going on in the CPED directly relate to a chief of staff keeping abreast of what's going on in the city. And you can't keep abreast. And it's not just that. I work closely with Mike Durkin. I work closely with Kevin Flynn. So I might be entitled the director of CPED, but I'm also working closely with the other department heads as well, because again, that department touches so many other departments, if that makes sense. So
yeah. So I get it's like the nature of the game for the economic development director position. I guess my statement about it would be like, I'd like it to be 100% on economic development, whatever that looks like. Remove anything that might not connect with economic development from your plate. If we're looking at trying to expand the economic development department, that's what makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense to have looking at expansion, but not 100% utilizing who's in that department already 100% of the time. And if you can at all differentiate or remove any tasks that aren't 100% related to economic development director position, I would like to see that done possibly before we look at an expansion of the department.
If I can respond.
Yes, Nikki.
So, the economic development director is Sharon. Community development director is what I'm trying to propose for Beverly. So
I misspoke on your title.
No, I just mean like the duties, I guess. The duties of the director is to ensure all of those pieces work together and to make sure that the planning is in line with the community development, which is in line with the economic development, which is why I'm involved in all three now. That's a critical piece of communication from that department layer to the mayor to what's going on in the community. Because again, I work a lot of the times with Mike Durkin. I work a lot of the times with Kevin Flynn. I work with Chuck Shasho. So it's not just the director of one department and you can just take hats off. The chief of staff is involved in all of that. The director of this department is focusing on those three to make sure that they're meeting the standards of need to, I guess, filter into those other areas, into those other departments, to make sure code is working properly, to make sure that, the street department is in line. We also are working with the parks department to make sure that when we come up with economic development projects that they do or don't conflict with anything that's going on in the park department. We have economic development plans right now that we're working with Dawn on. So our department touches a lot of other departments. So it's a department thing, not a position. if that makes sense. Our department as a whole is engaged in every other department in the city.
Just to follow up, I guess my confusion lies because I thought we just talked about how that was the planning position's job, was sort of doing all of that, working with code enforcement, working with the other, and making sure that the economic development director's work and the community development director's work were aligning and that stuff. So maybe I'm still thinking you're actually wearing more of the chief of staff hat and doing what you just described. Sounds more like the chief of staff type of duties. I guess I'm a little confused at this point.
It's both. The planning director is doing the physical, technical work of it. They're doing the technical work of it. I'm sitting on these in these meetings with them. I'm working. I'm helping work out, look over. So basically, those three divisions will be reporting to me. So I'm looking over the work. We're approving it together. We're making sure that it makes sense. So that's how that piece of it works. As far as the chief of staff hat, yes, it's almost a similar role, working with the other departments. But our department as a whole touches every other department in the city in some form or fashion, whether it's through HUD funding, whether it's through economic development activities, whether you're trying to close down streets or you're looking at zoning things for economic development, whether there's enforcement issues or housing enforcement issues, it still directly relates back to our department.
Councilwoman McNally, did you have a follow-up? Is there anybody else? No? Okay. So are we good? We're going to then go ahead and move forward to new business. And under new business, we have the substantial amendment of the 2019 annual action plan and a revised citizens participation plan. And that was emailed to us both from Nikki and our clerk's office. Nikki, did you want to go ahead and go over that?
I'm going to turn that over to Beverly because that's all under her.
Okay, Beverly.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm going to be very brief, and the document that I'm looking at now is the one that says City of Youngstown, Ohio, substantial amendment to fiscal year 2019 program year for the CARES Act funds. Okay, all right. So the rationale for the amendment. First, I'm just going to talk briefly about why we had to do the amendment for the 2019 program. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act is called the CARES Act, which was signed into law on March 27, 2020, provided funds through CDBG and ESG programs. The CARES Act provides for allocation of funds to only prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. So we don't have the funds yet, but HUD typically announces the funds, and then we move forward making a budget. And I will go into that very briefly, okay? The City of Youngstown has taken stock of the local needs and parameters of each of the programs. And from that, we determined how the funds allocated would be used in the community. Okay, so that's a substantial amendment because we got extra funding that we had to decide what the local needs were and how we were going to use those funds. And then for the citizens participation plan process, this amendment to the participation plan was also due to the pandemic. And the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development granted us several waivers as a procedure to expedite the use of the funds. These are the COVID funds that we're going to get eventually. These waivers included an ability to amend the citizens participation plan to allow for a shorter time frame for public display, and we were allowed to do it on the internet. So public display, anything that any documents that we prepare and send to HUD, we typically have to put them on public display, but usually it's for a 30-day period. So we were able to put it on display, and it's currently on display now on the city's website. A copy of the substantial amendment and also a copy of the amended citizen participation plan. So we had to include in that participation plan that we were going to be doing virtual meetings. We usually do those meetings in person if it weren't for the pandemic. So these are HUD guidelines that we are following. And we're also having a public meeting on Monday, June 15th, and it's a virtual meeting, and citizens and any interested stakeholders will be able to make comments on the substantial amendment and the citizens participation plan. So both documents are posted where you can look at the budget that we prepared. It's a very brief budget. These funds were intended only for prevention, preparation, or response to the COVID virus. Okay, so that's basically all I have to say, that those documents are available for you to view, and you can see the actual budget is broken down into 7 line items. And that's the way these funds were intended, to just break down into general categories, economic development, and we're doing some public services like job training and short-term emergency assistance for families. And we intend to help food banks also. So that's basically, and these documents are intended for council to approve at the meeting on the 17th. So we really don't have much time, because we have to get this into HUD in order for them to give us additional information and show us how they want us to disperse these funds and how we're going to implement the programs once we do get the funds.
For clarification, then would we need to ask then for the law department to draft ordinances?
I sent,
Or they already
know.
working on that?
Yeah, I sent something, request for legislation to the law department. So I don't know how they're going to follow up with it, but it's for the council body to approve these 2 documents.
Okay, so I'm going to assume then they're working on that, and since we had a CPED meeting, we're just discussing it just so we gain clarification
Yes.
prior to the meeting. Okay.
Yes.
Does anybody have a question or comment? Councilman Davis?
Through the chair, Beverly. So it's for the prevention.
Prevention and for the preparation and response to coronavirus.
So I just want to make sure I'm thinking the right way. As in response to, so if we could also use these funds as part of prevention and response to purchase protective gear for our residents. Is that correct?
I'm sorry.
Will we be able to purchase protective gear for our residents?
That's not included, but I didn't want to go into details of what exactly is going to be provided, because we're still waiting. Even though we've moved this far, HUD still has to give us further guidance on implementation and so forth, and how we're going to issue these different funds.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I have a question.
Councilman Turner.
Through the chair. So just so I'm clear, the meeting on Monday that's scheduled for public comment is based off of what's currently posted on the city's website?
Yes, it is.
And then on our meeting at Wednesday, we need to approve that document as well as the document you've presented to us.
Yes, it needs to be approved, because if we don't approve it and have the mayor sign some other documents that have to go along with these documents to submit with HUD, we will miss getting this funding.
This additional funding.
This additional funding, yes, we've already gotten our 2019 funding. This is an amendment. This is supplemental funding simply because of the pandemic. These are supplemental funds.
Okay, and what's the total funding? So this 2,000,000.
2,000,0091689 for the CDBG and 1,062,917 for the ESG, the homeless fund.
Okay, and then one more, the meeting that was, I want to say about 2 weeks ago, is that how you came up with the assessment for what those funds should be utilized for?
Yes, we had the stakeholder meetings.
Yes.
And then we based it on input plus eligibility.
Okay, input and eligibility. Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay, so it looks like we are done. The next meeting will be announced. Can I have a suggestion or a motion from the committee? What would the committee like to do?
Excuse me, through the chair, may I mention another comment before? We also have our 2020 fiscal year funds, and we're going to need to possibly have another meeting soon. So you will be able to see our budget on those funds also, because we have to get those funds ready for public display also. So those will be our fiscal 2020 to 2021 funds. 3.5 million CDBG, about 600 some thousand home dollars, and another 300,000 plus ESG dollars. So if we could, Nikki and you could you and I could discuss, we might have to have another meeting very soon for the CPED committee in order to get this funding out on time.
Okay, thank you. And Councilman Turner, you had a comment?
Just to follow up, so with those, with the current 2020 budget, that's for the grant cycle that we just went through. You already have those grants in, correct?
No,
Or those applicants, have they already applied?
Yeah. Through the chair, yes, Councilman Turner, or Councilwoman Turner, we have applications taken in for the 2020 funds, and we're just finishing reviewing them. So now we're doing a budget to utilize, and evaluate the applications and so forth. And Nikki and I will be going over a recommended budget. And then we will need you to review that as a CPED committee first, then that budget will go to the full council to be approved.
And just a direct follow-up through the chair. So does that need to happen before we hit recess, which is next Wednesday, or will that need to happen in a special meeting as you're still preparing that budget?
Let's see, the council meeting that will be approved at is, I'll have to look at that. I believe you will be adopting it at your August 5th. So I don't know if that's during your recess, because we have to have it the document submitted to HUD by the 11th of or by the 1st of August, the 11th of August, excuse me. So if I could go ahead.
So that would need to be a special meeting because that is during summer recess.
Yes, and I believe maybe Nikki and Councilman Adamsack maybe have talked about that already. I'm not certain.
Thank you. Did anybody, Councilman Oliver, did you have a question? Or
Yeah, I just had a quick question for Nikki. How confident are you that this restructuring, I know how confident I am with, Hunter's abilities and the new guy we'll bring on for a plan of succession. But how confident are you that this, combined with restructuring economic development, is going to be what we need to get the city of Youngstown back on track? And how are you going to ensure, given the history in economic development, that this is exactly what we need to make this work?
Nikki?
I spent the first 6 months just objectively looking at everything, looking at every structure, every process, looking at whether or not we have the skill set to carry out the duties of our division, looking at the support that would be needed. And the problem that I saw, the challenge that I saw is a processing challenge, because we don't have the bodies and the skill set in line to do the jobs that were outstanding, or that were, like you said, bottleneck. Restructuring, making sure that, you know, each division has its own separate entity, yet work together, makes the more sense in my observation. As far as making sure that people do their job, restructuring is part of that. We've moved some jobs around already. So accountability is there. I meet weekly, if not daily, with both Beverly and Sharon. We're always in conversation. We're always bouncing things and making decisions. I also have a standing meeting with the mayor for my own accountability. So those things are happening already, those accountability factors. And if I could just say, I know when you don't see buildings go up and you don't see results happen, things are still moving in that direction. And if I could just give an example, we have a company now that wants to expand and offer apprenticeship programs for Youngstown City School students. That relationship took 2 years to cultivate. We have another business that we're working on through economic development that is in another city that's moving into Youngstown. That relationship took over a year to cultivate. So just because, and there's a lot of businesses that are in the city that we've worked on that relationship. So the activities are always ongoing. Buildings coming up is not a result of success. We see that already in some of the things that we're already struggling to, I guess, carry through. So just because there's a structure doesn't mean that's a success. That relationship building and cultivating private and public dollars and nonprofit dollars, those things are happening right now. You'll see legislation coming up now where one of the programs that we're putting together through economic development, a bank was so pleased with what we presented that they're offering dollars. So we have nonprofits that are coming together saying, how can we help the city of Youngstown? We have dollars we want to put into what you're doing. So the activities are there. And I think the more we have these meetings, the more you'll start to see that, and you'll get a better understanding of what the department does as a whole.
Thank you for that. Just a quick follow-up. What are some of your immediate expected outcomes after restructuring? And how do you relay that information to the citizens of Youngstown so they're not just feeling like nothing's happening?
Through Chair.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I've always, and I've talked to the mayor about this several times, as well as Beverly and Sharon, is getting out in front of, sorry. One of the things that we've been talking about is getting out in the community. We had already started planning getting out in front of the community in March, and we see what happened in March. I've stressed to the mayor over and over, I want to get out in front of people. I need people to know what we're doing, but I need to get behind these processes that keep me sitting at a desk. So the more we could hash out these things quickly, put the processes in place, let us get out in the community, let us do community meetings where we're talking about what's going on in economic development. We want to hear from the community what they want. We want to meet with the business community. We want to get out in front of the citizens with community development. We want to be able to showcase what we're doing. We haven't been able to use the platform because we've been so limited in staff and what we can get out there and do. So I'm ready to get out in front of the community. I see what's going on in my department, and we're ready to talk about it and share that with the community. And again, the more of these meetings we can have where we're sharing, even if we spotlight, economic development at our next meeting. I know Sharon has a presentation that she wants to provide here. Beverly and I are working on some community outreach that we want to do. We're excited to say that we're looking at some minority business outreach. So these kind of meetings are helping us launch out what we need to do, but we can't do it if it's just a one-person division stuck behind a desk all day trying to figure out processes.
Thank you.
Through the chair, may I make a comment?
Yes, go ahead, Beverly.
Okay, you had asked about the next meeting and everyone's concerned about the next meeting, and I do have my dates here. We have to have our 2020 activities to our consultant by June 22nd. So that's why the urgency to meet with the body again next week, possibly on Thursday again, if at all possible. And then these documents have to go on public display. Now, we didn't have a waiver for this one. So the action plan for 2020 and the 5-year plan have to go on display for 30 days. So July 1st through August 1st. And then we have to have it approved at the council meeting that used to be scheduled for the 3rd of August. So we might have to have a special meeting for that. And then we also have another public meeting that we have to have on July 7th. So then we can get comments from the public, anyone who wants to comment on the 2020 plan and the 5-year consolidated plan. So those are the actions that we have to do. So I will be submitting a budget on the 15th. And then I would like to have the committee review it possibly on the 18th, so that by the 22nd, we can start our write-up that we have to have in order to be on time to put it on public display.
Okay, we will, and then after the meeting, we'll check with IT and the clerk's office to see what time, is available. And then I'll ask, be in touch with the committee as well to see their availability.
Okay.
Okay, what is the wish or the recommendation of the committee, Councilman Oliver?
I'd like to have Nikki forward the professional service agreement with Hunter Morgus and the economic development or CPED plan to the law department to draft legislation to be considered at city council.
I'm only comfortable moving forward with a Hunter Morrison contract. I want to have the executive session regarding the lawsuit and our finance meeting with the finance director to go over our first 2 quarters of the year before moving forward with the restructuring plan.
Quick question for Attorney Monterno. Would it be okay for us to still forward it to at least the legislation to be drafted, right? It could always be drafted, and then we can, have executive session, correct?
So if the concern is about the pending litigation, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we can have an executive session. The legislation can be drafted, and then, maybe if after council hears about that pending litigation and what the status of that is and what concerns that may or may not give council, then council can make that decision. But I think that's a fair suggestion to have the legislation drafted and then, make a decision about that, once you have all the facts.
Okay, so I would be comfortable with that. I mean, there's no harm in having legislation drafted and then we can either, discuss it further, or, put it in a committee. So I'm fine with having both be drafted.
So how soon can we go into executive session?
If the law department's available at our Wednesday meeting, I don't see why we couldn't do it then.
Through the chair, we're here and available. We'll be happy to do it on Wednesday.
Okay.
But I mean, I'll say, I guess, why would we make them do work if we're not sure on the direction of work yet? Like, they have to draft the legislation, but maybe we're going to have a bunch of revisions after we have those 2 meetings. Maybe not make you do work and then go back and have to revise your work on that piece.
Wouldn't we be able to just amend it?
Just trying to streamline less work, that's all. For the law department, not for us. It would be for the law department.
I thought I don't know, I guess, either Jeff's, I just figured drafting it so that way there's some, instead of just keeping it in committee, drafting it, and then we can look, through it and make changes or amendments if necessary.
Through the chair. Yes, I appreciate Councilwoman's concern about the work, but in terms of legislation, it doesn't take much effort to put a piece of legislation of this nature together. We'll be happy to do an initial draft, and if it needs some typing changes, we're happy to do that.
Okay. Is Jen still on with us? Oh yeah, she is. So Jen, is that sufficient? Does there have to be actual motion, or is that fine? Just letting, telling them to draft the legislation?
Yeah, that's fine for them to draft legislation, and that's working product anyway, so that can be altered along the way. And it's something from you to work from, because you want to present that to council as a whole anyway. You're just the committee recommending body of council, but you're not the whole council. So perhaps that might make sense, just as long as you're clear on the motions when we close out the meeting. Because if you're saying draft the legislation on both items and
Yes.
forward, yeah, I would just make sure we reiterate that at the conclusion.
Okay, so I think we're pretty much ready to conclude. So would somebody like to make the motion, please?
Lori?
We're keeping it here though, like we're gonna recommend that we're gonna ask them to draft the legislation. That's the motion, and then bring it back to this committee? Or are we asking them to draft the Hunter Morrison contract piece of legislation and passing that on to the next step, and then drafting the restructuring and bring it back to this committee? I'm asking my committee members.
Oh,
I think that's what you wanted, Lauren, right?
That is what I wanted, yes.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, so if I make a motion to draft the legislation for the contracted services with Hunter Morris and take that to council as a whole.
Second.
And then draft the legislation. Then I make a motion to draft the legislation for the restructuring plan and bring that back to this committee.
Second.
And I make, Jen, are you, oh, sorry. Jen, are you okay? All right, then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
we are adjourned at 3:34.
Samantha, did you have some?
Wasn't there a third piece we needed to send forward to council? That third piece that Beverly presented, that needs to go to council. We need to vote on that, right, Beverly? So that needs to go for,
Yes.
Then what would we do with amendment? Is that, but no, that's already currently being drafted. No, that's already being drafted and going to go to council. They just put it on the agenda to give us a courtesy to let us know because it will appear on the next agenda. Is that correct, Beverly?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank God, because we would have had to go back in the meeting.
Okay,